Barak was a military leader who, alongside the prophetess Deborah, led Israel to a stunning victory over the mighty general Sisera. But what made this victory so remarkable? Barak faced overwhelming odds and the fearsome enemy, yet his faith and courage, under Deborah's leadership, secured Israel's freedom. Have you ever had to step up in a time of fear and uncertainty? What can we learn from Barak's boldness and trust in God's plan? In this video, we'll explore how Barak's partnership with Deborah transformed Israel and brought victory against all odds. You'll discover valuable lessons about courage, leadership, and trusting in God, no matter the challenges you face. Are you ready to find out how Barak's story can inspire you to face your own battles with faith and determination? Before we begin, make sure to like this video and subscribe to our channel. Your support helps spread this powerful message to more people who need to hear it. Let's dive into Barak's story and uncover the lessons that can strengthen your faith today. During the time of Barak, Israel was in a state of oppression. The people of Israel had turned away from God, and as a result, they were facing severe oppression from their enemies, particularly the Canaanites. The Canaanites, under the leadership of their powerful general, Sisera, had been harshly ruling over Israel for 20 years. Sisera's army, equipped with iron chariots, was a constant threat to the Israelites, making it nearly impossible for them to resist or defend themselves. The people of Israel cried out to God for help, and it was during this time of great distress that God raised up leaders to deliver them from their enemies. In response to Israel's cries, God appointed judges to lead the people and bring about deliverance. One of the most significant judges during this time was Deborah. Deborah was a prophetess and a wise and faithful leader. As a woman, she held a unique position in a society where men typically led. Despite this, Deborah was chosen by God to serve as a judge over Israel, and she earned the respect of the people due to her wisdom and strong connection to God. Deborah would sit under a palm tree, where people would come to her for guidance and judgment, showing that her leadership was trusted and recognized. Deborah's role as a judge went beyond just offering wise counsel. She was also a military leader. When God called her to lead Israel in battle against the oppressive forces of Sisera, she was not afraid to step up and fulfill her role. Deborah, filled with faith in God's promises, summoned Barak, an Israelite general, and gave him the message from God that he should gather an army and go fight Sisera. Deborah's leadership was not just about her wisdom, but also her courage to take action when God commanded it. Deborah's role was crucial because she not only led Israel spiritually but also played an active part in their physical deliverance. She was instrumental in bringing together the people for the battle. Deborah encouraged Barak to lead the army, but she also told him that the victory would be God's, and the glory would go to a woman, fulfilling God's plan. This was a moment of great trust in God's guidance, as she knew the outcome of the battle was in his hands, and her role was to ensure that the people followed his direction. As a prophetess, Deborah also had the responsibility of speaking God's word to the people. She was not just a military leader but also a spiritual guide. Through her, God delivered his message of hope and encouragement to Israel. Her influence extended beyond military strategy, as she helped to re-establish faith in God during a time when Israel was spiritually weak. The Israelites, under Deborah's leadership, were reminded that God would fight for them if they trusted in him. The situation in Israel during Barak's time was one of oppression and fear. The people of Israel were suffering under the rule of Sisera and his mighty army. But God raised up leaders like Deborah, who demonstrated great wisdom, faith, and courage. Deborah's leadership was instrumental in bringing Israel back to faith and leading them in battle against their oppressors. Her example teaches us the importance of trusting God's calling, no matter the circumstances, and stepping up to lead when called upon by God. Deborah, as a prophetess and judge, had a deep connection with God and knew that the time had come for Israel to be delivered from the oppression of Sisera, the commander of the Canaanite army. God spoke to Deborah and told her to summon Barak, the general of Israel, and give him a message. She told Barak that God had commanded him to gather an army of 10,000 men from the tribes of Naphtali and Zebulun and go to Mount Tabor to fight against Sisera. Deborah's leadership was crucial in this moment, as she knew that the Israelites needed strong guidance to confront such a powerful enemy. Barak, however, hesitated when Deborah delivered God's command. He was not confident that he could win the battle on his own, and he expressed his reluctance to go without Deborah's presence. Barak told her, "If you go with me, I will go, but if you do not go with me, I will not go." Judges 4 verse 8. This response showed a moment of doubt and fear, as Barak was unsure if God would truly deliver the victory. His hesitation reflected the fear and uncertainty that often accompany big challenges, especially when facing an enemy as powerful as Sisera. However, Deborah agreed to accompany him, understanding that her presence was necessary for the success of the mission. Deborah's response to Barak was one of encouragement and assurance. She assured him that God was with them and that the victory was certain. She also made it clear that, although God would give them the victory, the glory of defeating Sisera would not go to Barak. Instead, it would be given to a woman. This prophecy would later be fulfilled through the actions of Jael, a woman who played a pivotal role in the defeat of Sisera. Deborah's words were a reminder to Barak that the battle was ultimately in God's hands, and he would use whoever he chose to bring about his victory. Despite his initial hesitation, Barak gathered the Israelite army and went to Mount Tabor, trusting that God would guide them. Deborah went with him, offering support and encouragement. As the battle began, God intervened in a miraculous way. Sisera's army, with its iron chariots, was overwhelmed by a sudden storm that turned the battlefield into a muddy swamp. The chariots, which were once an advantage, became useless, and the Israelites were able to defeat the Canaanite army. Barak, with Deborah's help, led the charge, but the final defeat of Sisera came through an unexpected source, Jael. Jael, the wife of Heber the Kenite, played a crucial role in the completion of the victory. After the battle, Sisera fled on foot and sought refuge in her tent. Jael welcomed him in and offered him shelter, but when Sisera fell asleep, she drove a tent peg through his skull, ending his life. This act fulfilled Deborah's prophecy that the honor of defeating Sisera would go to a woman. Jael's unexpected and courageous act was a reminder that God can use anyone, regardless of their gender or status, to accomplish his purposes. The victory over Sisera was a great triumph for Israel, and it brought peace to the land for 40 years. Deborah and Barak led the people in a song of celebration, praising God for his intervention and acknowledging that the battle was won through his strength. The defeat of Sisera not only marked a physical victory over an enemy but also a spiritual victory, as it showed the power of trusting in God's guidance and following his commands. This story of faith, leadership, and divine intervention teaches us the importance of obedience to God and the courage to take action, even when the odds seem impossible. The battle between the Israelite army, led by Barak, and the Canaanite forces of Sisera took place in a region near Mount Tabor. As Barak led his 10,000 men into battle, they faced a well-equipped enemy with superior technology, including iron chariots, which were a significant advantage on the battlefield. Despite the overwhelming odds, Barak had faith in God's promise, knowing that the victory was assured. The Israelite army, under Barak's leadership and with Deborah by his side, engaged the Canaanites in a fierce and decisive battle, with both sides fighting for control. What seemed like a difficult and nearly impossible fight for Israel was turned into a miraculous victory through divine intervention. As the battle raged, God intervened by sending a sudden and powerful storm, which caused the battlefield to become muddy and swampy. The Canaanite chariots, which had been one of their main advantages, became stuck in the mud and were rendered useless. This turn of events greatly disadvantaged Sisera's army and allowed the Israelites to gain the upper hand. The storm, sent by God, turned the tide of battle in favor of the Israelites, showing that God's power was greater than any military strength or weapon. The storm wasn't the only factor in the victory. God's intervention was clear throughout the entire battle. The Canaanite forces, disorganized and disoriented by the storm, began to flee in panic, with the Israelite army pursuing them relentlessly. Sisera, the commander of the Canaanite army, realizing that defeat was imminent, abandoned his troops and fled on foot. He sought refuge in the tent of Jael, the wife of Heber the Kenite, hoping to find safety and rest from the battle. Sisera's decision to run away from the battlefield ultimately sealed his fate. While Sisera sought shelter in Jael's tent, he had no idea that the woman who offered him refuge would play a crucial role in his downfall. Jael welcomed Sisera into her tent and gave him food and drink, making him feel safe. Exhausted from the battle and believing he was safe, Sisera fell asleep. But Jael, knowing the significance of the moment, took action. As he slept, Jael drove a tent peg through his skull, killing him. This unexpected and bold act was the fulfillment of the prophecy given by Deborah, who had declared that the honor of defeating Sisera would go to a woman. Jael's victory over Sisera fulfilled God's plan, and it was a key moment in the complete defeat of the Canaanite forces. Barak arrived at Jael's tent and found Sisera dead, marking the end of the battle. The death of Sisera meant the total defeat of the Canaanites and the liberation of Israel from their oppression. This victory was a clear demonstration of God's power and his ability to use unexpected means to fulfill his will. Through Jael's courage and Barak's leadership, Israel was set free from the tyranny of Sisera and his army. The defeat of Sisera brought peace to Israel for the next 40 years, and the song of victory sung by Deborah and Barak highlighted the greatness of God's intervention. It was a celebration not just of a military victory, but of God's faithfulness to his people. This battle serves as a powerful reminder that no matter the odds, God can deliver his people and fulfill his promises. The victory over Sisera was a turning point in the history of Israel, demonstrating that with God's help, even the most powerful enemies can be overcome. The victory over Sisera had a profound and lasting impact on the people of Israel. After years of oppression under the Canaanite rule, Israel was finally freed. The defeat of Sisera and his army brought peace to the land, and Israel experienced 40 years of freedom from Canaanite oppression. This period of peace was a direct result of the leadership and faith of Deborah and Barak, as well as the divine intervention that turned the tide of the battle. Israel had been oppressed for so long, and this victory marked the beginning of a time of restoration and security for the people. After the battle, Deborah and Barak celebrated their victory with a powerful song of praise and thanksgiving. This song, recorded in Judges 5, is known as the Song of Deborah. It recounts the events of the battle and praises God for his intervention in bringing victory to Israel. The song emphasizes how God fought for his people, using natural elements like the storm to disrupt the enemy's plans. It was a time of worship, acknowledging that the victory was not just a result of Israel's strength but of God's power and faithfulness. This celebration helped solidify the people's trust in God, knowing that he was their true source of deliverance. The victory over Sisera was not just a momentary triumph, it was a turning point in Israel's history. The Song of Victory highlighted the faithfulness of God and the importance of trusting him in times of struggle. Barak and Deborah led Israel in worship, reminding the people that it was God who had given them the strength to overcome their enemies. This victory demonstrated that, when Israel followed God's commands and trusted in his guidance, they would be victorious. The song served as a reminder to future generations of the power of God's intervention and the importance of remaining faithful to him. Barak's legacy as a leader was deeply tied to the success of this battle. While Deborah played an essential role as the prophetess and spiritual leader, Barak demonstrated courage and obedience in the face of overwhelming odds. Despite his initial hesitation, he trusted in God's promise and led the army into battle. His willingness to obey God's call, even when the battle seemed impossible, showed the kind of leader he was. Barak's actions not only secured victory for Israel but also proved that God would use those who trust in him, regardless of their fears or uncertainties. Barak's leadership, alongside Deborah, had a lasting impact on the people of Israel. This victory reinforced the people's confidence in God, showing them that God would always be with those who trust in him. The defeat of Sisera was a powerful reminder that God's plan for Israel was greater than any earthly power. Barak's courage in the face of adversity became an example for future leaders of Israel, demonstrating that faith, obedience, and trust in God's power lead to true success. The 40 years of peace that followed Sisera's defeat were a testament to the lasting impact of this victory. Barak and Deborah's leadership created an environment where the people of Israel could thrive, free from oppression. Their faithfulness to God's calling was instrumental in this time of peace, and their legacy continued to inspire the people of Israel. The victory not only brought physical freedom but also strengthened the spiritual foundation of the nation, reminding them that, with God's help, they could overcome any challenge. In conclusion, Barak was a courageous and obedient leader who, alongside Deborah, played a crucial role in freeing Israel from the oppression of Sisera and the Canaanites. His willingness to trust in God's promise, despite his initial hesitation, allowed him to lead the Israelite army to a miraculous victory. With Deborah's guidance and God's intervention, Barak and the Israelites overcame overwhelming odds, demonstrating that with faith in God, no challenge is too great to face. Barak's story is one of faith and courage, and it serves as an example for all of us. Just as Barak stepped forward, even when uncertain, we are also called to trust in God's guidance in our lives, especially in difficult times. How can we apply Barak's lessons of courage, faith, and obedience to our own lives? Whether in moments of personal struggle or in the face of obstacles, we can draw strength from Barak's example and trust that God will lead us to victory, just as he did for the Israelites. Consider how Barak's courage to step out in faith can inspire you in your daily life. Are there areas where you feel uncertain or afraid to take action? How can you rely on God's promises to overcome your fears and trust that He will guide you? Like Barak, we too can find strength in God's call and obedience to His will. Take time to reflect on these questions and think about how you can apply the lessons of faith and courage from Barak in your own journey. I encourage you to reflect on the power of obedience to God's calling in your own life. Barak's leadership was not only about military strength, it was about trusting in God's plan and following through with what He commanded. In our own lives, obedience to God can lead to incredible victories and transformation, even when the path seems unclear or difficult. Let Barak's example challenge you to trust God more fully, knowing that He is always with us, guiding us to the victory He has promised. To leave you with an inspiring thought, I want to share part of the victory song sung by Deborah in Judges 5 verse 31, "So may all your enemies perish, Lord. But may those who love you be like the sun when it rises in its strength." This beautiful reflection reminds us that those who follow God's path, trusting in His strength, will shine brightly and bring light to the world. Just as the sun rises with power, our faith and obedience can help us rise above any challenge and shine in God's glory. As you go forward today, remember the courage and faith of Barak. He trusted in God, stepped into His purpose, and led the people to victory. Let that same faith empower you to face whatever challenges come your way, knowing that God will provide the strength you need to overcome and emerge victorious.